Alright, so let's take a look at our reference again for our cabinet. And it looks like it's got a little handle that sort of just kind of comes out there. There's a hole in the middle and there's a little knob here. It looks like there's an indent, but we could do that in texture, and the same thing with the gray countertop. So let's go ahead and start looking at unwrapping this. So one of the tricks that I do whenever I'm unwrapping is I select all the objects and hit F to focus. Shift right click, combine all of them in one. And then I right click, go to face mode, and I select them one by one and clean them up. So I'm going to just go into my UV editor here, select that inside face, delete it. And then I'm just going to do that really quickly with each one. So this guy here, hide everything but that, delete, select that inside face, delete it. I don't need the bottom face here, and I actually don't need the one that's sitting against the wall because we're never going to see it. So I'm just kind of getting rid of the faces I don't see. That actually goes for this guy too. I don't really need that face on the bottom here. This one I do need because it's going to cast a shadow down. So if you take a quick look, really for this bottom piece all I have is this. And for this front part here I just have this. So let's take a look at unwrapping this. It's actually pretty easy. So I'm going to go into my UV editor here. And if you aren't seeing what I'm seeing here, we want to go to Windows, Workspaces, and we want to go to Reset Maya Classic to Default. And now when you go into the UV editor, everything is reset back to the initial state. Alright, I'm going to start by unwrapping my major part, which is this guy here. So F to focus, and double click it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just follow the same process I do for everything. Shift right click, mapping, planar map Z, and then I'm going to right click in here, go to UV mode, and I'm just going to click on unfold. And I just want to make sure that the top part is up, something like this. And I'm going to scale this down a little bit. And then I'm just going to snap it to the bottom. Alright, so that one's done. Let's go to this guy here, hide everything but this. And shift right click mapping on Z. And what I'm going to do is go to edge mode now. Select that top edge and then shift double click the bottom one. And what you'll see is it selected all the edges at once. Let me show you that one more time. There you go. And you can see here's the object. So I'm going to actually go in here and I want to cut those edges. So I'm going to hit shift and X. You can see now that those edges are cut. So when I go to unfold it, I'm just right click and go to UV mode, double click it. When I hit unfold, you'll notice now that it unfolded it with all of those cuts, separating it here. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and scale this down, and I'm going to just place it. Let's get this guy out of the way too. I'm going to place it right here. Now, ordinarily, really good UVing for compartmentalizing is this. When we go to bake this texture on here, it's going to actually create a black box. We could just take our front cabinet and just place it inside of there. Actually, let's put this over here. And that would be like the best, most optimized way of doing it. But I'm not terribly concerned about that now. So I'm going to go ahead and double click this. And you know, maybe I'll go ahead and demo that for you guys later. Okay, so double click that, shift right click mapping, same deal. Hide everything but that, edge mode, select this edge, shift double click. And then I'm going to hit shift X with all these edges selected, these side edges. Shift X in here. You can see it's cut. Right click UV mode, and I'm double clicking that one UV. Move it off to the side. Then I'm going to hit unfold. Let's scale this down. And let's just place it here. And then I think the last thing is the top, and then we have to make the handle, the two handles. So for this top part, mapping, planar map Z. Let's hide everything but this. Now the cutting of this is, what I want to do is I want the dominant part, which is this top part, to be front and center in my UVs. So that what that means is I have to cut these edges here. So you'll notice if I hit Shift X, we'll have nice little cuts. Come on, cut, dude. Let's try that one more time. Sometimes if it doesn't work, you have to go in and clean the model. So you have to history, freeze transform, the deleted history, freeze transform, and make sure it's centered. Okay, let's try that one more time. There we go. It was acting a little weird. Let's try it again. Select these edges here. Shift X. Let's see what happens when we unfold this. Maybe it's just not showing up. So let's unfold here. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be cutting. Let's try this again. So let's select that one. Shift X. This model could have, this top part could have some problems. No, it looks okay. Alright, so I figured out the problem. So I'm going to go ahead and select these. And then you'll notice now that it works when I hit Shift X. It cut them. Sometimes you have to go in and optimize your scene so it gets rid of all the other extra junk. Now let's see what happens when we unwrap this. Yeah, see, we get a much better result. And all I did to cut this was, when I'm looking at this, I know anywhere where I add a cut, I can imagine that this face is going to get detached. So if I cut it here and I cut it across these edges here, and then I have another cut here, what's happening is these cuts, imagine that this face is only attached by this one edge. It's going to take that face and it's going to swing it out when we unfold it. You can see here's our top and here's our front. So what I normally do in these instances is I go ahead and rotate it this way, but I add one additional cut because the inside face here is never going to be seen. So it doesn't need a lot of room. So what I'm going to do is cut this edge here, Shift X. I'm going to shrink this down really small, but just big enough where um, it can, when we go to bake out some of the texture on there, like our ambient occlusion or our shadows, it's got just enough space where it looks somewhat interesting. So let's go with this just a little tinier, and then I'm going to decrease this guy here. That should be all the space we need for that front cabinet. And then for the top part here, I'll just have it take up this corner here. And then that way if we need any more, we do any more changes or we want to add a different texture, we have some little bit of space. Alright, so let's go ahead and delete history, freeze transform, center pivot. Let's go ahead and model our handle really quick. So I'm going to go ahead and hit 5, and I'm going to turn on my make live here. There we go. And I'm going to shift right click cube, and I'm just going to drag out a little box out to the front here. That lets me draw right on the surface. And I'm going to do the same thing again. Shift right click, and let's make sure nothing's selected. Grab another cube, and I'm going to drag out that other little handle here. And what I'm going to do is, I unchecked make live. I'm just going to pull this out a little bit, scale this down, and I'm going to go with kind of a generic sort of handle. So because it's so tiny on the screen, I don't even think anyone's going to notice. So let's make it a little fatter. And I'm just going to select these two side faces. Let's hide everything but this. It seems to be having a problem. There we go. Select both of these, and I'm going to hit Control E, extrude these out, pull them in just a little bit. So I'm pushing them in I press W to go into move mode, just so we get a little bit of a visual interest here. Control E again, push those in, hit R to flatten those. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and just press my delete key, get rid of those faces on the inside, and there's that handle. As for this one, I'm going to just kind of scale it in a little bit and just hit Control D to duplicate it and make it a little bit fatter than this area here. And then I'm going to hit Shift right click and smooth it out, just so we have a knob. And then as for this guy, just delete those two inside faces. And let's just quickly combine these again, and then we'll unwrap these two really quickly. So let's go ahead and clean our model, history, freeze transform, center pivot. And then I'm going to go to face mode here, hide everything but this, and then let's unwrap this top one first. So if you did the suitcase tutorial, it's pretty much the same way for unwrapping. I cut all of this inside. See, I cut that top edge. So just so you can see it one more time, select this top edge here. Actually, let's go ahead and move all of this out here. I forgot my first step. Shift right click after selecting all those faces, planar map on Z. And then let's get this thing all the way out here. Edge mode, select these top edges. Shift X to cut it. Shift X to select this to cut it. So now this inside part is out. I'm going to cut. Well, let's go ahead and unfold this so you can see it happening in real time. So let's go ahead and unfold this again. All right, you can see this is that inside edge. So it doesn't look too bad. Now this one, what I'm cutting is this. I want um, this part here, this top part, to flip upward. So I'm looking at a V on top. So watch this. If I hit Shift X and I cut it there, and then I select these two edges here, and I hit Shift X again, let's see what happens when we unfold it. You can see that that part popped up. That's this part here. See that? I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. So edge mode, select these two edges here. Shift X, go to UV mode, unfold. Now you can see that that's the shape we get. So all I do now is scale that in, scale this in, just place it in here, because we're not even going to look at the back of it. In all honesty, we could probably delete these faces. You know what, I might just do, no, we'll just leave it. Alright, let's go to UV mode, select these, scale them way down, just kind of place them in here. It's so tiny on our scene that like really we're just going to give it a reflective material. Alright. Actually, you know what, let's exaggerate this a little bit. I'm going to scale this up. There we go. Now let's unwrap this and this guy right here. So let's hide everything but that. Same deal. Actually fatten this out a little. Shift right click, mapping, planar map Z. Let's move it off to the side here. What I do with my spheres is I just kind of unwrap them like a map. So what I mean by that is if you look at any sort of globe, it's got a little cut that runs down the back and it's pulled apart. So you can see here, I'm hitting F to kind of focus that edge there. So inside of here, I'm going to hit Shift X, go to UV mode, right click, unfold. Actually, let's just hit unfold here. There we go. That's done. It's just pulled apart on that cut. So let's throw this guy here. All right, and lastly, let's do this one here. I'm actually going to grab these verts and push it in so we get a nice ambient, we'll get some nice shadows around that. Same deal. This time, because I have no face there, I'm going to shift right click, go to mapping, planar map Y, and you can pretty much cut this anywhere. So I'm going to hit shift X, and when I unfold it, it's just going to flip all of those out, and it's going to give me a perfect box unfolded. So you see that? And this is so invisible that I'm not going to use it any. I'm going to try to pack as much space in here as I can. So I'm going to push this up here. No one's even really going to look at this. So let's go ahead and save this. Um, I'm going to hit Control S, and I'll throw it on the desktop as a cabinet for now. Because what I sometimes do is I just kind of just work off the FBX from Unity. So I'm going to hit History, Freeze Transform, Export Selection, go to my desktop, navigate all the way to that 3D Models folder. Objects, let's find our cabinet folder somewhere in here, right? 3D Models, Objects, Kitchen Cabinet, and let's see how it looks inside of Unity. Sometimes when we do that, our prefab loses connections. You just have to drag. So this is our, oh, this is our prefab right here. We just drag our cabinet and redrop it and hit replace anyway. And you'll see that because our pivot was here, it went through the floor. So I'm going to undo that, and I want to show you. If we jump back into Maya, ideally, you want to hold D and X. You always want your pivot on the bottom of your model. So now watch what happens when we export our model. It's going to sit right on the floor, because that's really how it should work. And here's our prefab, so I can duplicate this one because we're getting a little closer. The last thing I want to do before we switch over is right click, assign a new material onto this, and then we're going to select the Lambert, and then for the name of our Lambert here, I'm just going to name it kitchen underscore cabinet underscore large underscore mtrl. Export selection again. And now back in Unity, when I go to select my model, we get kitchen cabinet large, and you'll notice this still says Lambert 1, so we have to replace that one. And now you see it's updated. I'm actually going to save my Unity scene too. And in the next video, we'll take a look at texturing this inside a substance.